Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation. I'm Gary Williams. This week we are joined by Brandel Chamblee, and it's not because he's getting ready to be joining us, but it's because it's the truth. He is one of the most polarizing voices in the game of golf, and I also think one of the most important voices because he has an earnestness about the way he goes about his job. He's got a righteousness about his opinions, and they are backed up with data that is literally reams and reams of paper. I've had the pleasure of working with him, working around him, and he's unmatched in terms of how he gets himself ready to do his job, and that is to call it like he sees it, to analyze the game of golf, not only the execution, but the game plan of the best players in the world. So I am very pleased to bring him on for this Five Club conversation. He is the lead analyst on the studio side, and like I said, one of the key voices in the game of golf, and that is Brandel Chamblee. Junior Senator. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thank you, Gary. It's so good to talk to you. It really is. I love hearing your thoughts, and it's you always. Well, I was talking about this the other night with my friend Eamon Lynch, my frenemy, Eamon Lynch.
And mine too.
When we do shows with you, and Eamon said the same thing. He goes, when I do shows with Gary, he goes, I have to work harder. He goes, because I know he's going to keep asking questions. He doesn't just have questions, ask them and move on. Like you'll say something, you go, hold on a second. What do you mean by that? And he's like, you do. You make people work harder to keep up with you. So always a pleasure.
My mom would say the same thing when I was a kid. I'd say, but why? Why is the greatest question? And you can extrapolate why to infinity.
Yeah, you can. Ultimately, it ends up with, because I said so.
Which is a great way to...
Which I often say to Eamon.
That's a great way to get him to please be quiet. This year was really interesting. And look, all the years in the game of golf, because there's so much texture depending on what aspect of the game that you want to focus on. But if I said to you, the story of the year in golf is what would be your answer?
Tiger in the ditch in California in February. I mean, it framed the debate and the talking points all year long, and I think it piqued everybody's interest. I mean, when you saw the wreck in the bottom of that canyon, the first thought was, is he alive? I don't see how he could be alive. I remember it obviously very well. I had arranged to have lunch with my kids. They were all meeting me at a spot. I try very hard when I'm off to just disconnect and be with my kids because I'm gone so much. I sat down, my kids sat down, and I said, kids, I'm so sorry. I gotta go sit in the car and do this interview. Order me this, And I hadn't yet seen the pictures. Our mutual friend, liaison, does everything at the Golf Channel, Courtney Holt, had texted me, listen, man, we got to get on the air. And when I saw the wreckage, I thought, well, how do you survive that? And then, of course, as the details came in, it sounded like he was going to lose a limb, lose his leg. And then all year long, the first question I got asked in almost every single interview I did was, do you think he'll ever play again? Of course, none of us would have any way of answering that question with any accuracy. We're all, guessing. But anyway, it still, I think leads the conversation, and we're going into the father-son, or the PNC now, as it's called, and I think the whole golf world is pretty darn happy to see that he's going to be at least back in some semblance as a golfer, and there's a chance that he'll pick up and be able to play some events.
You're going to be there, and what happens, and this has happened with you over the last really decade, because he's had these interruptions. Followed by these long breaks in the game, and then he puts out very specific material, and usually it may be a swing, it may be a couple of swings, and then you're required the obligatory analysis of these swings. How are you going to try to digest what you see from him this coming weekend?
Well, I don't think once he became sort of the custodian of his own talent, quit listening to other people, his golf swing really hasn't changed that much. It's become very orthodox, almost without any idiosyncrasy at all to it. It was always in a state of flux. And we can, quickly, cross the line and shut when he first came out, to beautiful, but unbelievably powerful in 2000 with all that speed, bowed wrist and laid off 2005 to 2009, but with all that success, still the speed was there, and then sort of sucked the club to the inside under Foley, began to cross the line, wasn't anywhere near as good, you certainly thought, but he became number one. So it was always in a state of flux. So I was always being asked, why would he change? What's the benefit of this swing? What's the downfall of this swing? But beginning in, I don't know, when did he jettison Como? It would have been 2017 end of, when he played the Hero.
Yeah.
He came out, and the golf swing really hasn't changed much. It's been beautiful to watch, and he has been at times a pretty darn good. When he won Zozo, his last win, it was a clinic. So I love his golf swing. I think it's one of the best golf swings of all time. You could say that 3 or 4 iterations of his golf swing are the best golf swings of all time. Pick one. He's like a wine. It depends on the year when you start talking about Tiger. And but this golf swing is beautiful. And I watched it when I was covering the Hero. I knew he was going to play the PNC because he had these large basketballs out there or whatever. But I couldn't believe how fluid it was, how long it was. It didn't have, Tiger Woods' speed, but his speed had already decayed by the time he crashed. It was already down to 114. 114, 115 miles an hour when he crashed. So I didn't expect him to come back. Even if he does come back with any great speed, he's going to have to plot his way around the golf course. Highly unlikely he'll be able to dominate par fives with power.
Why is it that nobody has been able to do a reasonable impersonation or even try of his golf swing? Seriously. Brandel, every great player through the years, and particularly now with social media, we have these people who actually do really good facsimiles of various historic golf swings or present day. Nobody has even tried to impersonate his swing. Why?
You can't imitate his swing because there's nothing idiosyncratic about it. It's utterly conventional. He doesn't even waggle, really. Once he puts his hands on the club, they don't really move around much. Once he gets over the ball, there's no tension. There's no weirdness to it. There's nothing that catches your eye. There's nothing about it that's not beautiful and conventional. If you look at, you could do Jack, you turn the head and fly the right arm and sort of reverse C. You do Arnold, you could do Watson, you do Seve, you do Lanny, you do Corey Pavin. You name it, you could do them. But look, nobody imitates Adam Scott.
No.
Nobody imitates Charles Schwartzel. Nobody imitates Louis Oosthuizen. You can't imitate these swings they're too doggone good, and you would look foolish trying to. Because if we could swing like that, we all would. Like I can swing like Corey Pavin. I used to do a really good Corey Pavin imitation. I could do a really good Lanny imitation. I love doing Lanny because they give you so much. They're sort of caricatures. Tiger, no, you wouldn't dare do it because you'd look like an idiot because you couldn't. If I could swing like Tiger, I'd be doing it. I wouldn't be doing the imitation. I'd be out there every day trying to do it.
Do you think, and this is something that you've talked about through the years, about his desire to pursue something different, and whether it's more perfect or whatever the motivation was that it has deprived him of certain levels of production, but in that is that all of these roadblocks he's faced has provided him with motivation to come back and do more. What do you think the motivation is now? He's going to be 46 in a week and a half. What's the motivation?
I would imagine it's getting to 83 wins and being outright all-time leader of PGA Tour wins. I would imagine he probably, depending upon how you are. You've played enough competitive golf and you're good enough where the minute you start hitting it solid, you start imagining even greater success. You're like, oh gosh, I can get this done. I can win. The next thing you know, it's like, where could he win? Well, Augusta National has been, it's been a place where players go in there long in the tooth and do quite well. You can get around there. So I would imagine his goals, he's not normal, he probably thinks he can win another 2 or 3 majors if he's got any semblance of golf game. He probably thinks he can. I would say, look, it's Tiger Woods. So you'd hesitate to say he can't do something, but he's 46 when he comes back and plays in the Masters. If he comes back and plays, he'll be 46 and he'll be banged up. And he said that he said this last week at Hero, that the doctors would be more concerned about his back than his leg. And he had said all along, he didn't really know the life expectancy of this spinal fusion. So, he's got a lot of hurdles to get over, but to 83, it seems like his right place to be the outright leader of all time in PGA Tour wins, and we've gone back and forth on this. And look, if he had never changed his golf swing, you can easily say he'd won 100 times and 25 majors. But then there is the other side of that argument that it was him tearing down and building back up these golf swings that kept him interested and made him who he was. I've heard that side of argument, and I think there's legitimacy to that. But the numbers themselves are just too tempting to look at and go, gosh, if he hadn't changed his swing in 97 in the summer,
right,
he wouldn't have had a lackluster 98 and a lackluster beginning to 99. If he hadn't changed his swing in 2002, he wouldn't have played so lackluster in 3 and 4. Now I say lackluster, it's lackluster compared to his winning percentages of those. But hey, I started doing TV in 2003, came to Golf Channel in 2004. So the entire time I've done TV, I've been talking about Tiger's changes. And you were always very gracious with me. You'd say, because everybody loved to try to categorize me or pigeonhole me as a Tiger critic. I never was, but I was always talking about his golf swing being changed. So it certainly sounded like I was a Tiger critic, but I just thought it was bizarre that somebody would change the greatest golf swing in the history of the game that won 4 majors by wide margins and won an unbelievable clip. Why would anybody change that? But on the flip side of that, it was one of the most interesting things to watch and to talk about, not just as a commentator, but as a spectator.
Well, you've studied a lot of historic figures, read about them. There's a lot, genius can be ugly. And there is, and I mean that not only in terms of, the mental side of things, the psychological side of things. There's a great book called The Perfect Mind, and it's written by a psychiatrist about whether it be Churchill or JFK or Gandhi, and that there's a lot of elements of genius, but it is also coupled with whether it be bipolar, depression,
right,
anxiety. And I'm not suggesting that he has any of those particular things, but he's a genius. In my mind, he's a golfing genius. And I think at times genius can be ugly. Is there anybody in the game today who has elements of genius?
Elements of genius, certainly not like Tiger.
No.
No, I mean, we'll never, no, we'll never see anything like him again. I've never seen anything like him. I mean, Bobby Jones, I suppose you could say, and, Jack Nicklaus had a genius for golf. But no, in golf today, I thought Lydia Ko had it.
Yeah.
For sure. And you might say that Jin Young Ko has it. But we'll have to wait and see. I thought Michelle Wee had it. On the men's side, when I think about that kind of genius, no. I mean, it just, by definition, genius is extremely rare.
Yeah.
It just doesn't come along very often. People would say Seve was a genius. And I'd go that way. But Seve, unfortunately, started listening to other people and lost his way. And he lost the thing that made him a genius. And I always thought, Tiger ran that danger listening to so many people, but Tiger, kept his own counsel more than I think people give him credit for. That swing that he had in 2000 was his making, not Butch's. He finished the 97 Masters and came into the Golf Channel because there was no YouTube, and he didn't, I mean, back then it was the only place you could go get it was Golf Channel. They had it. And he sat there and he came out with a notepad full of changes that he wanted to make. He let Butch be his eyes when he made those changes, but those were his design. You know, and just to underscore his genius, I was talking to the whole crew at TaylorMade.
Yep.
And Tiger was out testing some clubs, but he was just hitting, as he was waiting to do some video or whatever, he was just hitting 7-irons. And he was hitting high little soft draws and high little soft cuts to a pin that was like 100 yards away with a 7-iron. And Tiger would have hit his 7-iron 180 yards or 170 yards, but these were 100 yards. And they were landing on the green and backing up. Which come on. I was like, what? No, they weren't. He goes, no. They were landing on the green and backing up. And they were backing up all around the hole. They were coming in from the right side and the left side. And after a while, they had to stop. They were like, oh, whoa, this is like the craziest thing we've ever seen. What the hell are you doing? How do you do that? And they said, Tiger just looked at his hands. He goes, I don't know. It's just in my hands. And you know, how you go back and you look at those shots that he hits, and you're like, how else could he do that? And who else is capable of producing anything like that? Any semblance of that? You know, and after Tiger came along, understandably, every enthusiastic parent had read about Tiger's life, and they thought, all right, and every enthusiastic young kid read about his life, thought, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this, and it's going to give me this. And it's like, no, you give, and this is where genius is so compelling and amazing. It's like you give the same experiences to somebody that Shakespeare had growing up, and they don't rock Hamlet. You know, it's not, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to get this. That's just who Tiger was. He has some bizarre ability, unbelievably rare ability to focus his mind on the task at hand, and then the ability to pull it off and sort of shape his body to the lay of the land and match his body chemistry to the moment and pull that off. There's nobody in golf like that today. Nobody.
No,
not Justin Johnson, not Justin Thomas, not John Rahm, and it's no knock on them. It's, you know, it just doesn't come along very often.
No, you know, I was lucky enough. It was the fall of 2015, and I sat down with Palmer, Player, Nicklaus, and Trevino at the Greenbrier, and one of the things we were talking about was, you know, the edge, because there was a wonderful story that Michael Bamberger had in a book that he had written, going to see Palmer. And Mike Donald was with him. And Mike was kind of like his attaché the whole time he was writing that book, which I thought was great. It was a good element to the book. But Palmer, you know, said to them, you know, after 1960, I lost my edge because he had got that U.S. Open at Cherry Hills. But one of the things that they were talking about was how players said that he did, meaning that Palmer and Trevino loved playing more than Player and Nicklaus did. He said, those two loved it more than we loved it. You know, and I get it. But when you look at today's player, who do you think that there's an unbridled joy in playing? But you combine that with this sense of playing with a referendum, because I don't know how much joy. I think Tiger got joy from terminating people. I don't know that, and he got delighted by hitting shots that others weren't capable of. But he did play broke. But who plays with joy now?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think Justin Thomas plays with joy. He looks like he's competing for the pure joy of it. I think John Rahm plays with joy. I mean, you know, who wouldn't enjoy that? But there is right. I would like him, but there is an element of joy that is palpable when they play golf. I don't see them going through the motions. I mean, will we ever find anybody that loves golf like Arnold Palmer? I don't know that. There's never been anybody that loved golf like him, but You go back to Genius real quick. There's a video out. I'm sure you've seen it of Lee Trevino where he's talking about
yes,
parallel with Good Will Hunting and Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon, played by Matt Damon, and he talks about his character. Obviously, Will talks about he could just do it. He could always just play when he looked at numbers. And Lee said I was like that. And if you go back and you look at Lee's career, he played one tournament in New Orleans, the one where he went the whole week without making a bogey and won. He won by 8. That week, he said he never watched one shot after it. He never looked at a shot. He hit them and he just started walking, but never watched the shot. He was hitting it so good, he didn't even need to look where it went. And, it sounded like hyperbole, but there's video of him attached to those comments. It's a USGA video where he says that. And then they went back and found video of him hitting these shots. And sure enough, you can see him, he hits these shots and he just starts walking. And he wins by 8. And I think, perhaps he did have a genius in his hands. Maybe Byron Nelson had that. But no, Tiger had it. And as far as joy, I grew up loving golf. I mean, I went to bed every night thinking about it. I woke up thinking about it. I'd never stopped thinking about it during the day. But somewhere along the way, when you become a professional and you realize, you're missing so much at home. I thought, God, why didn't nobody stop me when I was growing up and say, hold on a second, do you really want to do this? You're going to be gone all the time. And the joy went out of it for me. And that's why I went into TV. I thought, I don't want to be gone all the time. I don't want to be absent all the time. I want to have friends. I want to go to games. I want to have a life. You don't have a life when you're a professional golfer because it's a sport. There are people ready to take your place if your game falls off. So you're always working on your body. You're always working on your mind. And you're always working on your golf game. And I guess that's what makes Jack Nicklaus so amazing, is that he had balance in his life. He was that good. I was a very good golfer, but I certainly wasn't good enough to take time off. I needed to sharpen the knife all the time. And the joy went out of it for me. It's like, I don't like grinding myself to a pulp 24 hours a day. I want to enjoy my life. And I don't see that. I don't see that in Justin Thomas. I don't see the joy going out, because as soon as expectations become so great, when a player achieves something that's amazing, well, it always comes with these. Unfortunately, it comes with the burden of great expectations.
Yeah.
And not that many players deal that well. Like I think Rory hasn't dealt that well with the expectations that the world has heaped upon him after he came out and won. I mean, he's dealt beautifully in his life.
Yes.
From all appearances, it seems like he has the most amazing life, and he's the living embodiment of what we envision Arnold Palmer to be, at least in my view. He's one of, if not the most amazing person in golf in that regard. But I feel like the expectations the world has heaped on him for golf has been a difficult thing, and that's quite understandable. It becomes more of a burden, or it seems like it does. I don't know if Rory would agree with that or not, but it seems like it would.
He is, you had mentioned Eamon's name at the top, and I had this, it's always a good conversation. It can be dicey because you're kind of psychoanalyzing people, but I had this conversation about Rory with Eamon and Jaime Diaz. And I'm not sure what exactly it is, and you can talk about some of the physical things and the technical part of his, when you get inside 150 yards and he's not as efficient as he should be. But I think that you have a point. If it's a combination of expectations, also maybe thinking for maybe 2/3 of your life so far, he's 32 years old, that your identity was wrapped up in golf, and then he's realized as he's evolved and gotten married and had a child with a curious mind that he doesn't want to be identified as a golfer. Right. He wants to be identified as somebody who's got depth and breadth. of who he is, and what effect does that have on performance? I mean, how can somebody who really is so prepared like you are with quantitative data and context to support positions, how do you explain him?
It's easy to understand him wanting to change his golf swing. That's easy. Everybody's always tinkering, but now you have this YouTube, this Library of Congress in front of you at your disposal, and you can go in there and you can educate yourself for sure, but you can also go down these rabbit holes. And I think he has a curious mind. He wants to know. You listen to him talk, and he's knowledgeable on political subjects, social dilemmas, you name it. He has that breadth. But I have no doubt that he's as much of a swing geek as I am. I have no doubt. And the fact that he is so unbelievably athletic from a movement, from a proprioceptor standpoint, he can do anything. And so I'm sure he's looked at his swing and think, well, why don't I try this? Why don't I try that? Why don't I try that? And I often say that it is more important to feel than to know in golf at the highest level. Like you really don't need to know. It's not his job to teach. So he doesn't need to know everything about the golf swing. He just needs to know what it feels like when he plays his best golf. And it's hard once you abandon those fields to ever find your way back home. I've heard him say something along the lines of, because people will say, and I think it irritates him when people say, well, if you swung like you did in 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, boom, you're back. I think he's like, well, it's not that easy. I don't think he can just go back to that golf swing. It looks like he could, but I just don't think he can. I mean, they're night and day differences where he is at the top now and where he was then. And I think that's a big part of the reason why he just hit his irons better then. But at the same point, like Tiger Woods, Tiger changed his swing and maybe it wasn't as good for periods. It was still the best there was. I mean, Rory won the Varden Trophy in 2019, won the Players in 2019.
Yeah.
He still does amazing things. The years tick by, though. It's been going to be 8 years since he won a major. I mean, sneaking up on 8 years since he won a major championship. And he's in the prime of his career, and the door closes fast from a physiological standpoint. So, I look at Rory, I look at him completely different now. I look at him as, I think, the most polished man in golf, the most appropriate man in golf. Mm-hmm. We talk about Arnold Palmer all the time, and rightly so. Arnold Palmer was certainly gracious and made you feel like you were special when you're in his company. But I think, and not that Arnold wasn't this way, but Jack Nicklaus always seemed, and this is going to maybe not have the right intensity to it, but appropriate. Jack was always appropriate. In the media center, he would listen to questions and understand that the person asking it was in that room because A, they were good at their job, but B, because they give thought to what they're doing, and he would give an appropriate response, try to. And Rory does that in the media center. He tries to give an appropriate response, an honest response, a thoughtful response. And I love that about him. And I love the fact that he can talk outside of golf. I love that about him. That may not necessarily help his golf, but I have no doubt. And I mean, I'm friendly with Rory and I would like to think we're friends, but I'm certainly not in his world. Mm-hmm. But I have no doubt that it makes him a great friend and a great father and a great husband and just a great citizen. And is that more important than great golf? It is if you're in his world. He can affect a whole lot more people in a positive manner by being a great human being than he can by being a great golfer. He entertains people with his golf, but he makes people better by being a better human being. And that echoes, that circles upwards. You make your kids' lives better, their friends' lives better, your wife's life better. And it is, it's just, it's more important to be a great person than it is to be a great golfer. And I think Rory realizes that. And I've done a few interviews with Rory where I asked him that question, how you bridge this gap between the sort of arrogance it takes to be the best player in the world and humility it takes to be a great person. And and he spoke about balance. He spoke about Jack Nicklaus in that regard. And even Jack Nicklaus recently in an interview, I saw it somewhere on social media, where Jack said, look, you have to be selfish to be a great golfer. But I think Jack was great at turning that off. Like the second he left the golf course, he could turn that selfishness off and become a father, friend, a husband. And that's tough to do.
Yeah.
That's tough to do. But I think Rory does it as well as anybody.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, look, if he gets to a point where he doesn't win the Masters, will he lament not winning it? Sure. Not winning more major championships. Will there be a level of disappointment? Yeah, but it's not going to break him. And I do think, Brandel, that this game, and I think that there are documentaries to be made about how this game, because of the dynamic of doing it alone. And my father, he played baseball at a high collegiate level, but he also, had a career where he was responsible for the advancement of a lot of people in a corporation. And the thing that he told me when I got to an age where I could understand it, he said, Gary, there are very few things more rewarding than collective achievement. Now, as a golfer, you can say you've got a team, but at the end of the day, you did it. You did it. And it's great to share it with the people who supported you. But my point is, when you don't win, you spend so much time wondering why you didn't. And you can't find comfort in teammates when you lose. And particularly if there's a dubious moment or a particular tactical error or a physical mistake that you made because the pressure was too great. And I think the game can break people. And whether it be because of what your expectations were and they're not met, whether it be because of injury or just performance. And there are players in the Hall of Fame that I still think the game broke them.
Definitely.
Did the game take something from you that you can't reclaim?
Yeah, I would say so. The game's been, has gifted me with so much, for sure.
Yeah.
It has given me so much, but, again, being gone, as much as a golfer is, and it was not like I played 30 events at all. I probably played mostly 23 or 4 or 5, but a year. But being gone all the time and then being, so focused when I came home. I've told this story a few times. I picked my son up from school one day. My oldest son, he's now 24, but I picked him up from school once, and it was a beautiful day. And I just gotten home from a tournament or something and picked him up from school. And, you want your kids to play golf, right? If you're a golfer, you'd like them to play golf. So I said, you want to go to the golf course today? And I said, no. I was like, no, beautiful day, and he goes, Dad, I don't like golf. And I was like, you don't like golf? And he goes, no. And I said, really? Why? And he said, because golf takes you from me. Mm. And, and I was like, oh, God, that hurt. And it's like, whew, I was gone all the time, and I can, about that time, my ex-wife, but we lost a child in there, and I thought, what the hell am I doing out here, gone all the time? I need to be home. I just didn't like being, I wasn't a good enough player. I was a good player. I was a good tour player, but I wasn't in the top 30. I certainly I couldn't afford a private jet then. So I couldn't just zip home on a moment's notice. I would like to, if I had to do all over again, I say this, and my wife sometimes now will go, really? You think that? I was like, I had to do all over again. I'm not sure I played golf for a living. Mind you, I played professional golf. I was on the tour for about 15 years, and I made good money, and I didn't have any worries. I was in the best place in the world, wonderful people, but I wasn't at home, and so if I had to do over again, I'm not sure that I would choose a profession that required me to be gone all the time. So yeah, from that aspect, it it took time away from my family. But the game, at the same token, the game has given me a wonderful life, something to pursue every single day. Get up. I always have purpose, and that's hugely important and a gift. If you can find something in your life that animates you to action every single day, motivates you to get out of bed, gives you something to think about, that's a gift. And since I retired from golf, I'm home a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And I get to be around people, but the game still gives me that joy. I'm still interested in studying the game, reading about the game, talking about the game. And I am, I have a wonderful sense of purpose in that regard. And the game's given me that. The game's given me this wonderful connection with my wife. My wife loves golf more than I do. If I went in there right now and said, "You want to go play now? We got to catch a flight this afternoon." She'd be like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we have the most wonderful time playing golf together. My oldest son now, at 24, loves golf, and out of nowhere, he just, if I call him and say, "Let's go play," he's all in on it. So my wife and my oldest son and I will go out and play golf. And I look around sometimes, I just got to pinch myself, it's like, how could you spend better time than that with your family? You're outside, you're doing something that's fun, you're reveling in the achievements of people and sharing their woes. And, golf is a wonderful gift. It has been great to me in so many ways. So it's hard for me to really say that I regret it, but part of me does.
Sure.
Having spent so much time gone.
Kevin Kisner said to me, and I've just got a couple more things and we'll wrap it up, I was asking him about DeChambeau, and I said, "Do you think he's a revolutionary type player?" He said, "Absolutely." He said, "But give him my kids for a couple months." And meaning, it's fun to run out there and try to, run that club head speed and that ball speed up to 200 miles an hour. Go home and carpool, and have a crappy night's sleep, and have him do that for a season. And let me see where his ball speed is. So his point is, I think that Bryson he's manic. He's totally lost in the pursuit of doing it his way. And I think it's fascinating, but how sustainable is it in your mind?
Well, first of all, I agree with Kisner. I was once, I was somewhere and played golf with Bob Estes. And he first came out, he chipped in like 3 times and every chip was like this close. And someone asked me why Bob Estes was so good at chipping. And I said, because he's single. Because he can chip till dark every single night. There's not somebody going, "Hey, tick, tick tock, let's go."
Yeah.
And I was like, you look at the best chippers at the time, it was like Justin Leonard, Jose Murillo, Thabo, Bob S. I was like, they're all single. I was like, they're all single. They chip till dark every night. Bryson DeChambeau is single. He didn't have a girlfriend. Go, come on, what are you doing? It's like, are you going to hit balls in the living room all day, every day? It's like, I love Bryson. I agree with Kiz. Maybe not so much in this particular era, but you think about how many people, first of all, if we'll go back, how many people have literally changed the way golf is played.
Yeah.
Not changed the game, because Arnold Palmer changed the game and Bobby Jones changed the game. But I'm talking about changing the way it is played. I think Hogan did it because he made people prepare more. And you could say that Tiger made the game more physical. But very few players have ever changed the way it has been played. Bryson, I have no doubt that kids in college and high school and even younger, they're watching him, and we know now, and they're paying attention, and they're going to cultivate. More of these kids are going to come out with speeds approaching 130, exceeding 130 miles an hour, and that's going to be the Bryson effect. I never thought Bryson was going to change the game when he came out on tour with the move he had.
Right.
Like he was fine. He was 20th, 30th, 40th on the tour, but he didn't hit it farther. He didn't hit it straighter. He didn't hit it better. He hit it fine. And he was a very good player. I didn't think that move was going to change the game, but this move will change the game.
The last thing I have for you is the architectural thing, because you have now carved out some real passion and time to the purpose and the pursuit of designing golf holes and partnering with somebody. You guys have a particular mission. What was it that kind of lit this match for you?
Just another aspect of the game that I was asked about constantly and certainly peripherally interested in. And I thought, why would I not try to get my arms around this? Mm-hmm. Why would I not dive in from an intellectual standpoint and learn as much as first of all, it informs me relative to my job. I have to talk about golf and golf swing and often golf courses and sometimes golf course architecture, but to the extent that it's more relevant and I think more interesting. And I'm always looking for ways to share things with the audience that are maybe not apparent to me, but as they become apparent to me, I try to educate myself on them. So it's just another aspect of the game that I was intrigued by, but I had been, talking as the debate has become more animated around the ball and the club and what to do about it, and architecture. I've been in lots of debates with architects, and I enjoy those debates, and I always find them to be very bright people, incredibly smart people. And I've enjoyed those debates, and I've differed with them. And so I started diving into architecture to figure out, why did I differ with them? What about their philosophy makes them generally all think and feel one way? And mostly they all want the ball to be rolled in and equipment to be reined in, so as to preserve the integrity of golden age of architecture and to make it much easier to design shorter golf courses today and they be relevant. And I thought, well, let me just dive into architecture. And the more I did, the more I looked around. There was a fellow by the name of Agustin Pisa, I call him Augie, whose work I really enjoyed. And I enjoyed what he was doing in Mexico. He ran the first tee in Mexico. He was doing courses in South America for impoverished kids. He was doing them for free. And I had looked at his courses and I loved his courses. And I had written about architecture a couple of different times about different ways that I thought you could combat the distance that the ball was going without necessarily changing the design of the golf course through setup. He reached out to me along those lines, and he literally drew 18 holes with all the parameters that I had laid out in an article and said, do you like these holes? I'm using your idea. I like your ideas. And I think we can do something. So I started looking at his work and I thought, gosh, let's do some courses. And he's got a great idea, and he's a very creative guy. And so we were in a project to do 4 6-hole loops in Mexico, just outside of Monterrey, calling it the butterfly effect. And within those 4 6-hole loops, there's 24 different configurations of golf courses that you can play. One of those 6-hole loops will be designed just for women, not just for women, but with women in mind. Yeah. And then that got us, we have a project where it likely will end up being 5 golf courses in South Texas, but one of them is a redesign and another one is a unique design. And we are endeavoring to build the first golf course for the very best professional women players, the same way that the TPC Sawgrass was built, not for recreational golfers, but for the very best professional golfers, to get in their heads and to give them a great stage for dramatics. And the city council loved the idea. I've talked to different corporations that have loved the idea. So we're trying to make this happen. It's my goal, our goal, to build a golf course with the dispersion rates, the trajectories, the spin rates, but that's the science in it. And then with the same sort of artistic and utility that would go into any golf course, but to give them the best possible stage for dramatics. You think about it, let me ask you this. What is the equivalent shot on the LPGA to Bryson's drive on the 6th hole at Bay Hill this past year? What was the equivalent shot to Bryson's drive on the 5th hole in the final match of the Ryder Cup? You may say Patty Tavatanakit's run at the A&A.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be close. But to me, the most dramatic shot hit in ladies golf in the last couple of years was Jennifer Kupcho on the 13th hole in the Augusta National Women's Amateur, going head to head with Maria Fassi.
Yep.
Now that's in large part because of her talent, but in some small part, due to the architecture of that golf hole. It encourages you and gives you a great stage for heroics. And because every golf course is designed for recreational golfers, but hardly ever with a woman in mind. The bunkers are in the wrong places. They're in the wrong depths. The turn points on par 4 or on dog legs are in the wrong spot. The layups on par 5s are in the wrong spot. Green depths, fairway widths, rough heights. They're never, women are an afterthought. And I thought, no, that's not right. We put bunkers in the right spot, the right depths, the right fairway heights, the right challenge. Give them the best possible stage for heroics and drama, thrilling golf shots. And I think that can only be good.
Well, it tickles me to say that you love to debate with them. You love to debate. But unlike John Feinstein, our friend, who wants to arm wrestle you to relent to his position, you end people with eloquence. You always have, and you probably always will. Listen, I could talk to you, and people could listen to you on so many subjects in this game. I'll look forward to doing it again, not necessarily with microphones in front of us or on a Zoom call, but hopefully just spending some time. I wish you and Bailey the happiest of holidays, my friend, and I look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Gary, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate that. I've always had the greatest respect for the way you do your job and just listening to you talk. So happy holidays to you and your family. So good to catch up with you.
Thank you, my friend. Really appreciate Brandel's thoughts. And again, I could talk to him truly for hours on so many different subjects, but a lot of interesting stuff, certainly about Tiger, about himself, and about the next chapter of his career. We really appreciate, as always, you for listening and watching this edition of the Five Clubs Conversation. We'll talk to you next time.